Welcome to Draconian, your podcast for news and updates in Hong Kong and Taiwan. I'm your host, William.
Hi everyone, welcome to the episode 26 of the Draconian podcast. This is your host, William. This week's episode will be about how Hong Kong and Taiwan are heading into two different diverse directions, with Hong Kong observing a much more muted political and socio-economical response, and Taiwan being focused on electing its president of the Legislative Yuan. This should definitely be considered a very interesting week. If you would like to learn more about what is happening in these two regions, please subscribe to our podcast, whether you're listening from your favorite podcast app or directly from YouTube or YouTube Music. Thanks for your continued support for the Draconian podcast. Now, let's get deep directly into news, topics, and updates that basically topped headlines in Hong Kong and Taiwan. So first of all, it's about news that is exclusively about Hong Kong. Firstly, is about the extension of operating hours on border ports in Hong Kong during public holidays, or in here land-based border ports. The government decided to extend its land-based border crossings operation hours in the Shenzhen Bay and the Luowu border crossing after chaos erupted in Huanggang port in the 1st of January this year. In that chaos, it demonstrated that the capacity was not enough, as Chinese tourists celebrated the New Year without the intention to stay in the city afterwards, while opting to choose to leave Hong Kong immediately after the celebrations ended. As a result, this created an outpour of disaffection, as the only 24-hour port that operates in Hong Kong, or land-based 24-hour port, is the Huanggang port, which would not be able to handle with such a huge amount of people that will use the port. As a result, it created the port was cramped with people who want to leave Hong Kong and to get back to their house in Shenzhen or even further north, while at the same time it also created chaos in some local train stations as people were waiting for the first train to cross the border back into mainland China. This not only created an outpour of disaffection, like on the news, it occupied the news at that time, while the government pledged to find new solutions or to facilitate a 24-hour operation of these ports with collaboration with authorities in Shenzhen. As basically, if you need to open a land crossing port for 24 hours, not only you need to be open for 24 hours, but also from the Shenzhen side as well. It also involves some traffic planning or public transport planning, which until today, or which from the news that was shown, it showed that the government, with collaboration with local bus operators and local train operators, have decided to support the 24-hour operation of these ports for the Lunar New Year season, where a lot of mainland Chinese tourists are expected to tour Hong Kong. This actually created an impression of Xiaohongshu ruling Hong Kong, where the government will only listen or proactively listen to those who will not pay tax, and here I mean tourists from mainland China, over the people who are residing in Hong Kong. As a result, we are seeing a very interesting direction, as the Hong Kong government seems to be pleasing people at Xiaohongshu, but not locally, or locals who are basically disaffectionate with the local government. And this is also a very interesting point, as we are seeing if these social media are considered they are controlled indirectly by the Chinese government. The Chinese government using this as an implicit way, or to use this as a way to influence, to exert its influence over matters in Hong Kong. These discussions also had led to accusations by a pro-government Legislative Council member in Hong Kong asking if the government prioritizes settlements of mainlanders over Hong Kongers or tourists over locals. However, the Chief Executive John Lee actually responded this in a very negative tone while asking if the consulate if they are inciting hatred similar to events that happened in 2019, or a bit here it's about the anti-extradition process. And the question is also about whether and also they warned about the consulate if that actually may violate the national security law or something similar, or any laws that are similar to this. So the direction in the Hong Kong government seems to be pleasing mainlanders, seems to be pleasing tourists instead of locals. Is that a worrying trend? Probably yes, but is that something that was like unexpected before, or is completely unexpected? I don't think so. Probably we will need to see if this issue or this event will happen again and again and again. And in this case, probably it will. So the next news about Hong Kong is about the Article 23 and its related legislation. As of recording, the draft bill has been introduced by the government, albeit not directly posted on the Gazette. The draft consultation document has been out, but it was out on today, the 30th of January, where this podcast or this episode would not discuss. However, the government actually had basically tried to exert its influence over the locals by saying that they will set up a lot of teams to deal with misinformation related to the consultation or imposing Article 23. At the same time, the Security Bureau Chief also expressed his wish to pass this law as soon as possible, as he thinks that for one day this law is not passed, there will be a day of national security risk. So, the government not only had introduced the Article 23, but also had introduced plans to try to exert influence over citizens or foreign citizens, similar to how the Hong Kong national security law is. At the same time, it also created the sentiment, or it also created the idea of it's only because you feel this negatively. However, I see, or I solemnly have felt the positive impact of this 由治及兴, or from rule to prosper. These discussions, or these things actually see how the whole government prioritizes national security over economic security or over anything else, as we are seeing the Hong Kong's government probably are going full-fledged on pleasing mainlanders instead of locals, while pleasing mainland officials over the sentiments of local citizens. So are they inciting sentiments against the central government? Probably yes. And if they are actually doing so, by doing so, are they actually violating the national security law? That is a very interesting question. So these are events, or these are most events that happened within Hong Kong. So next, we will have events that will be related to Taiwan. So as Taiwan election period has ended, there is an election for the president of the Legislative Yuan. However, before this president of the Legislative Yuan, the discussions last week was riddled by commentaries of elections by people from mainland China who left China because of suppression by the CCP. And this comes with the first news about Taiwan. The Late Late Show with Hello, an STL network production, was riddled with controversies as Wang Zhi'an, a former CCTV reporter, attacked the ruling party by calling out how the ruling party treated their disabled candidates. In this case, it's Chen Junhan 律师 or Chen Junhan 博士 or Dr. Chen, by having a disabled person having disabled from birth, by pushing him into the election podium and by using a speech to request for support. At the same time, it also stated that how the Democratic Progressive Party places him in the party list, or the idea or the method that he places in the party list, actually seems to not be, seems for the party to neglect the rights of these disabled people. However, these commentaries seems not a very controversial topic, while the real controversy is basically about how he imitated the disability of Dr. Chen by basically trying to mock him, or trying to use mockery to try to pretend Mr. Chen as speaking. However, this actually created a very huge controversy right after this video was posted online, because it is directed against a disabled individual. As a result, not only for Wang Zhi'an caught into controversy, but also for the Late Late Show with Hello, the SDR Network production, also caught into it, with sponsors quitting, and even a party sponsor, or in this party it means a political party sponsor, even filed to ask for damages to be paid because of this discussion, or because of posting this video. So this show actually got into controversy not because of the host or the co-host neglecting this, but it seems to be the internal control measures not working enough. As a result, the Late Late Show actually issued an official apology on Sunday night, on how they are trying to exert, or how they are trying to improve from this controversy, and explain the difference between a comedy show and a late night show and an interview of the late night show. Because in the discussions or in the sentiment against the Nana show, some people or some commentators think that the late night show is still a form of comedy, while at the same time thinks that these or how Wang Zhi'an speaks are actually a staged event instead of an impromptu one. So probably this is about the lack of understanding in the comedy industry, and probably is about the lack of information or lack of knowledge in how actually these late night show works instead of the usual way. So a big connection with the theme. So it's about diversity in Taiwan, as we are discussing about the protection of disabled individuals. Although, and also it created a very interesting point where everyone is talking about disabilities, but right now, or right at that time, not a lot of people actually think or actually voice out for the rights of these individuals daily. I mean, it's normal. There are people prioritize different events, prioritize different things over different things. So probably we are actually discussing the rights of the people. So the question here is that if we are actually discussing the rights of the people, or just using that as an example to attack political parties. In fact, even at the apology statement issued by the host of the late night show, Hello, he used a very interesting tone to say that, quote, he will support the DPP election in 2028, while he will just voice out his overall support of the DPP, and to try to use the late night show as a platform to help the ruling Democratic Progressive Party in its election. Probably this statement is not actually needed, because what people are angry about is not about how they are attacking the incumbent Democratic Progressive Party, but actually is attacking how the interviewee mocks disabled individuals. We're also seeing that how Taiwan is becoming a much more diverse city or a state with people, from even disabled people, will be able to enjoy their rights without any huge interruptions. So next is about another news, or next is about the real news happened in Taiwan, is about the Legislative Yuan's president election. So the president election of the Legislative Yuan will take place in Thursday this week, which means that it will take place on the 1st of February, as it also marks the first day of this new term. In last week, both the Democratic Progressive Party's party caucus and the ruling KMT Party's party caucus was formed. And however, the discussion for who will become the president was still in place, and it became the hot topic within Taiwan society after the election, especially because no party gained over, or no party would be able to control the Legislative Yuan by itself. As a result, the Taiwan People's Party became the most pivotal party to choose or elect the next president of the Legislative Yuan, where they will face a choice of choosing either the former Kaohsiung or deposed former Kaohsiung City Mayor Han Kuo-yu and a former Legislative Yuan member known for his subpar performance at the same time, 20 years ago quote, or You Xikun, the incumbent president of the Legislative Yuan, but is allied to the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, where the TPP tried to distance itself from during the election. The TPP actually decided to voice out their wishes for the would-be candidates on how they would be able to reform the legislative arm or the Legislative Yuan within Taiwan. And they have decided to decide which actually support these reform demands. In response, the Chinese Kuomintang actually responded this in a much more positive tone, while the Democratic Progressive Party mocked the discussion or mocked how the TPP is acting. However, although they are mocking how the TPP is reacting to everything that happened, they also enabled You to voice out his concern or to voice out his own personal opinion by saying that he personally supports this. However, as the president of the Legislative Yuan, he actually needs to be neutral in hosting all of these things. So which means that he will be able to support all these. However, it will not mean the party support. In fact, for all these reforms demands that were demanded by the DPP actually tried to pass or tried to post it into the legislative part or the Legislative Yuan after 2016. However, most of those which were not passed it, or which the TPP demanded this time, were actually somewhat got dropped down by the ruling party because of consultations and discussions within different functionary groups and within within subcommittees of the Legislative Yuan, where either they have found that these demands would require a referendum on amending the constitution, or it is out of scope, or it may actually lead to democratic backsliding attacks from the opposition. So both the KMT and the DPP actually responded in a much different way. Actually, we are also observing the difference and actually also observing how these different communities, or how the supporters of both the incumbent party and the two opposition parties works in online social media. And it seems that for the discussion in the ruling party, which you can say the host is somewhat aligned to. It seems that there are much more these discussions on whether this should be done or that should be done. However, for the opposition, some supporters of the TPP actually did not find out that supporting them means supporting Han to be the next Legislative Yuan's president. So this created some backlash within the opposition TPP, while at the same time in the Chinese Kuomintang, the discussion is about whether they should find a person who was formerly charged with corruption to lead, and discussions for whether they should be led. So as a result, it seems that they have done some compromise, and it seems that these compromise actually worked with the alleged, or not alleged, but the former indicted criminal now serving within the Legislative Yuan and decided to be the party leader of the party caucus of the Legislative Yuan's Kuomintang's party caucus. So this seems to be a bit different for how these different industries or how these different things works within the Legislative Yuan. As a result, we may actually need to discuss, or we may actually need to think on whether the opposition has a vision on how they will actually want Taiwan to, or how they will actually want to lead Taiwan to be. So the opposition. So the question is, have the opposition provided a vision on how the Legislative Yuan is ruled, or it is only based on all talk, no action, or based on very interesting, or basically based on slogans instead of real work? So, for my own opinion, if the opposition parties do not show a vision or do not provide a better alternative vision of Taiwan, they will actually never be able to rule or to become the incumbent party. This is actually how democracy works. And for the discussion on how Taiwan should be, or the discussion on how Taiwan actually should be, probably this would actually require a very dedicated episode, which unfortunately the host will be unable to do. So to conclude, the host hopes that you find this episode informative. If you do, please subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Furthermore, if you have any feedback, please let us know in the comments or drop us an email at william@dragonianpod.com. Thanks again for listening. We will be back next week with more news from Hong Kong and Taiwan. Have a safe, prosperous, and happy week ahead. Goodbye.